Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new The Batman 2021 update video. I've been wanting to talk about the Batman for quite a while, but in my mind there hasn't been anything too significant to talk about until today. I just wanted to give you guys my opinion on the whole Joker rumor. Now, we spoke about this before in terms of my thoughts on should Joker be a villain in the Batman trilogy, which, you know, it's a very interesting question because some people will be like, Boba, what you want about? Of course he should. You can't do a Batman trilogy, especially 3 movies, without introducing the Joker. But then again, I was approaching it from more of the mindset of, that doesn't mean he won't be in it, but should he be like a forefront villain? Like, is it time to give 3 movies to other Rogues Gallery members? But that's still may be the case. Like, this doesn't mean that Joker will be like a main villain, but we'll get into that because we've learned some stuff from Daniel RPK being the source who the direct website quoted in this article. And yeah, I just wanted to dive into it, get my thoughts out there, see what you guys think about this and my thoughts in general as well. So make sure you leave your comments and theories on everything I have to say and what Daniel RPK has to say in the comments down below, because I read every single one of your comments, especially when it comes to a Batman video. So let's get into this. So as I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is coming from the direct, but they quoted Daniel RPK. Now, as for that source, I think he is quite the reliable source. Like, if anything I've heard from him is usually been in the area of accuracy. They go on to say, now in an exclusive report, the iconic villain is due for his arrival, although it will be a new version to fans alike. So the news, according to our contributing insider, Daniel Richman, Matt Reeves is planning to introduce a new Joker into his Batman trilogy. Reeves is planning for the Joker to appear in the second and third movies as one of the film's multiple villains. This new Joker will be referenced in the 2021's The Batman, and casting for the role has not yet begun. Fair enough, because if he is going to appear in the first movie, The Batman 2021, which, you know, isn't actually the name, it could be called The Batman Vengeance, could just be called The Batman, but yeah, they would probably use a stand-in if they're going to actually weave him into this movie. So, like, okay, that is the main chunk of the article, and I've got, as you can imagine, a boatload of ideas, especially as I've made a couple of videos about this before. But my first reaction to this, so Daniel Richman is saying that Matt Reeves is planning on introducing a new Joker into his Batman trilogy, and that he's going to mainly appear in the second and third as one of the film's multiple villains, but also he will be referenced in this first one. So essentially what I've said before is that I'm not necessarily one of those guys who says, okay, you know what, too much Joker recently, Joker saturation, way too much of it. I actually think, I get where those people are coming from, but there actually hasn't been that many Jokers, especially if you look back at the timeline of when we did last see. I think it's just in recent years, it went from Heath Ledger, which was quite a while ago if you think about it, to Jared Leto's Joker and the appearances he had, which were few. And then obviously we got the solo Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. However, that is an Elseworlds Joker. So I think some people were thinking, okay, maybe we're not going to get one because, hey, that's a couple of Jokers in the past decade, give or take. But, you know, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't see the Joker again in this, you know, especially in Matt Reeves' iteration. I do understand, and I actually do stand by the people who say you can't really usually, especially if you're doing more than one film, a trilogy, do Batman without doing the Joker. Two sides of the same coin, whatever poetry or poetic line you want to put to it. I am quite a firm believer of that. However, my stance on it with my previous videos that you may or may not have seen in the channel, I'll link it in the description below just in case you're interested in hearing my full thoughts on the Joker in the Batman trilogy, is that while it was questioning should he be in it, in my mind, because, you know, maybe it's time for us to feature some more prominent villains, such as, you know, we've got Riddler as the actual first movie's villain. Maybe we could have had Mr. Freeze or several other Rogues Gallery members in the third movie and second movie as the main villain. Not to say that we won't have a main villain and lesser villains, like apparently Firefly being the Riddler's bodyguard in this first movie, so we could still have other villains and other Rogues Gallery villains as random as, I don't know, the ventriloquist in the second movie, but still like Bane being the main villain. But I did say in that video that I still think the Joker should be in it, albeit that maybe just not so prominent. Like, not a role like Heath Ledger's main, you know, villain role of, you know, the Joker in that film. One way I actually concluded is that if they're not going to do the Joker, do 3 films, and then at the end of the third movie, since Batman, let's assume there's no massive time jumps in between the first movie to the second movie, the second to the third movie, assuming he's still in his early 30s, give or take, he's in Batman, like year 4 to 6 or whatever, depending on the time jumps. By the end of the third movie, you could have Batman creating the Joker, and then it at least leaves the movie off in our minds and the fans' minds that we're not going to get any films beyond this third movie in the trilogy, but we know where Batman's going next. Like, we know R. Patz's Batman has created the Joker, and that's where they're going next, albeit that they just didn't feature him earlier on in the trilogy. I thought that would be one way to do it, just to maybe tackle the whole, okay, we've had a little bit of Joker recently, but on the other hand of things, that is quite an unlikely proposition and speculation I put out there, just because, if you've got the Batman trilogy, they're probably going to do the Joker, and it does seem that that is the case. Now, as for Joker appearing in the second and third movies as one of the film's multiple villains, so Daniel RPK there is, I'm guessing what he's saying, at least how I'm reading it, is that there will be multiple villains in the second and third movies, and which isn't necessarily mind-blowing. We've heard many different rumors when it comes to the Batman, so this kind of means that potentially the Joker won't necessarily be the spotlight, but he will be in the first movie, not properly, but maybe a stand-in. We'll get to that in a second. But the second and third movie, he will have a cast, somebody will be cast as the Joker, a new person. And I'm guessing he will appear every now and again amongst whatever the storyline is for all of these other villains, apparently, one of the film's multiple villains in the second and third movies. So I'm guessing maybe by the third movie, he will have a whole much more prominent role than what he even did in the second, let alone the first just being a stand-in in Arkham Asylum or something. This does actually sound familiar to something that Daniel Richmond put out a long time ago. This is right towards the beginning of the Batman Matt Reeves trilogy covering, and I was making videos all the way back then, in that I believe, and I'm paraphrasing here, that what Batman does in this film, not only is, all of his rogues gallery already out there and they're their own characters, but they're not necessarily the fully fledged comic book counterpart, but they're out there, and what happens in this film will open so many other doors, unfortunately for Bruce and Batman, to the other villains in which he's grabbed their attention. So maybe after the events of this first movie with the Riddler, Joker will be like, the Batman, maybe Bane, maybe Scarecrow, maybe various other rogues gallery villains, which you would have to assume is going to have at least some effect. Like, some of what I've just said there has got to be true, because the events of this first Batman movie, Batman 2021, are going to be so significant because, Batman has been apparently up against some of Gotham's crime families. He's maybe done a few drug busts, but nobody knows really. Like, they may have heard of the Batman, but not like, the Dark Knight, something that, instills fear in all of the hearts of the criminals, including Penguin, to everyone else. He's nowhere near at that level, but by the end of this movie, I think he would have gained some, whether he's famous to the people of Gotham or infamous is another question, but I think it will definitely stigmatize the name of the Bat for the villains, and some people will want to come out and play, and that's where the Joker will likely come in the second and third movie as a casted role. But it's interesting to consider that he does say here, this new Joker will be referenced in the 2021's The Batman. So what origin are they going with here? Has John Doe or whatever, or whoever Joker is, being created already? It's interesting because you would have thought if The Batman 2021 is going to have a Joker scene in it, not a casted Joker scene, but maybe there's a shot of Arkham Asylum, maybe the Joker is already in a cell, and they make it very, very obvious. Like, there's a billion ways they could make that obvious as to who that person is in the cell. So that would set up, okay, oh crap, he's there. We know that, and he's going to be referenced in this movie. But I have the bigger question, just like many of you are thinking, but okay, are we not going to see Batman create the Joker? And since this is Batman year 2, in the first 2 years of his career, did he just incidentally and subsequently create this character like he has done in quite a few iterations without even knowing it, kind of thing? Like, maybe he was stopping the Red Hood gang and this guy fell in the chemical vat. Very cliche, but maybe unbeknownst to the Batman. Maybe it was just like a oops, kind of thing. I mean, it would be a bit bigger than that for Bruce, but you know what I mean. It's just the way I'm reading this here is that this new Joker being referenced in the 2021's The Batman seems like that guy's already been created. And if that's the case, does he have this absolutely massive fascination with the Bat, or has he not even cottoned on himself? Because the Batman himself isn't that big in Gotham right now, but he will be, as I go back to my earlier point, by the end of this movie. I mean, think about it. This stuff is going to hit headlines. The Riddler, whatever he's doing in the movie, is going to hit major headlines, considering it has to do with the mayoral run, with lots of candidates and potential candidates dying. He's going to reach headlines, and Batman's going to stop him eventually, and that will make the Joker very probably fascinated with this guy. Well, probably not being the right word. He will be fascinated with him. As I said, don't want to get too deep into this because I can blabber on and on and on forever about how he will be in the first movie, even though he hasn't been cast. But what that does spell out to me is that he is already the Joker, and how did that come about? I can go into that forever, but really we don't know until we know. But it's still very interesting to consider that there might be multiple villains in the second and third movie. So is the structure going to be different? Or is this being stated in the same way that this first movie, believe it or not, will kind of have multiple villains? Think about it. We know that the Riddler is the main villain, but we know we got Colin Farrell's Oswald Cobblepot, who he said himself won't have a bunch to do in the film, but he's going to be in the film. And apparently we've got Firefly in there, we've got other villains who will more be like supporting villains despite being actual Batman villains. So this is why I'm mentioning that, is because, well, the second and third movie, as per this article and per insider Daniel Richman is saying, having multiple villains in the second and third, including the Joker, it just makes me think, okay, well, maybe there'll be another prominent Riddler-esque role main villain for the second movie, and then apply that again for the third movie. But that doesn't mean you're not going to see like an Oswald pop up or a Joker pop up, but just more prominently in those final two films. It'd be interesting to see if Matt Reeves does decide to actually make Joker maybe the last, like the third movie's actual main antagonist. Maybe they will set that up in the second movie. But all in all, like, my reaction to Joker being in this, well, I'm not surprised. It's just also interesting to consider that, wow, we've got another Joker now, a new casting who's going to be made for Robert Pattinson's Batman, like this new world, an actual, you know, brand new guy. And that's always a very interesting time. Like, will people love it? Will some people hate it? Some people will hate it, but then they'll end up loving it. It's like, we all know how it goes when it comes to a new Batman and a new Joker casting. You just feel sorry for whoever's been cast initially, unless they're like Robert Pattinson and they actually don't care. And they actually like that because they want to prove them wrong. I actually quite like that attitude that Robert Pattinson has, because, you know, he's got this whole underdog attitude to it, and he wants to come across playing a very, very good Bruce Wayne and Batman, and I'm sure he will. What I love about what Matt Reeves is doing with this whole multiple villains thing, it may sound intimidating to some fans and viewers and audience members, because it's like, well, that's a lot of characters to just put in 3 movies, where traditionally, you know, in Batman Begins, you have a certain, you know, antagonist. Second one, you have basically Joker. Sure, you may chuck in Two-Face in there, but it's basically Joker. Third movie, you also have Bane. It's just quite linear. But this sounds kind of like, oh my god, wait, isn't this going to be way too many characters? Some will just suck because you didn't have enough time in a movie to dedicate lines and story to that. No, I get that apprehensive side, but then again, you can just say that the world building that this is creating is like turning the pages of a comic book to life. We've actually got a Gotham City filled with these Batman's Rogues Gallery villains, and we could be potentially seeing, as it says in this article here, multiple, and that just makes me very excited, especially with the premise of this movie just being at those, you know, baby step days of being the Batman. But not only that, it's a reflection of the city as well, and the villains, they're all taking their baby steps, and it just sounds like an absolute recipe for success, and I can't wait to see that come to fruition. Now, other than that though, Bat Family, I'd really appreciate if you just left a like on this video. It takes 2 seconds of your time, really helps launch me out into the YouTube algorithm just a bit more. Other links are in the description down below to my Discord, my Twitter, and other places you can follow me. But yeah, I'm going to be reading your comments as soon as this video goes live, so let me know everything. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you will have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.